I think it's on, but they may have to control it. Oh, it's on.
Steve's ready to start.
Okay.
Do you know how many are signed? Who's doing the call?
This is so far. Did they say you were doing the in-house call-up or just the Zoom?
I believe I'm just responsible for the Zoom. I think Rich is going to call out.
Okay, house. This is, the checks are here, unless somebody's come in, because they don't come in. Like, if everyone shows up, it's like 30. But they're not all. I mean, none of these.
So I see,
He just contacted me and said he's doing Zoom.
Okay, I think they're ready.
Okay, let me tell you.
And Rich, you're doing the call out
Yeah.
in the room, and we're gonna alternate.
Rich, you're doing the in-person.
Yes.
And he's moved to Zoom. Oh, good, there it is.
You get to be.
Do we have Postman on yet? We'll need to pull him up so he's on.
I only see George.
really? Is George, we get our.
We don't see.
He says he needs a link.
Gotcha. I'm going to have Terry do that because I'm hooked up to the TV.
Okay.
We'll see what's gonna be, everything going on in church right now.
He's giving Greg a link right now.
Those are the only four who are on the.
Might all be back
And George isn't on there either?
George and Greg aren't on yet.
George,
We
I
better
know she
wait till
just
they're
sent
on.
George a
Yeah.
link. Charlotte just sent George a link, that for sure.
Okay.
So we're missing Greg.
I think we'll see them on there when they show up.
Okay, there's somebody.
George, and we'll get going
Is Greg on?
when they pop up.
George and Greg, we need.
I did send George's, and I just asked Terry to send Greg's. We do have George on.
Okay, George is on.
Here comes Greg.
Here comes Greg.
George and Greg.
Okay, they're
But
both.
they're not on the. Okay.
Do we need to give him the floating mic? Or is he gonna- All right, who's the middle?
Evan works. Because
Okay, welcome everybody. We were waiting till all the commissioners were on the Zoom call. We have 3 of them at home today. Here in person, we have Patty Clapper and myself, and then at home, we have Kelly McNicholas Curry, Greg Postman, and George Newman on the Zoom call. So welcome everybody to the ASE Vision Committee public hearing. The commissioners have looked at all the recommendations from the ASE Vision Committee. Some of them we left the same, others we modified, changed the wording, added some different thoughts to it as a draft, which is totally up to revision at this point. So we are all glad that you are all here today, and the people on the Zoom call, we're glad you're able to join us too to give public comments. The commissioners are here just to listen today. We won't be responding to anybody's comments, but just getting your input. You can also send any input to us at any point now going forward. That will be just as valid of public input as what's given orally today. So thanks for being here. I'm going to hand it over to John Peacock, our county manager, and he's going to go into some of the details of how the meeting will go and a quick introduction into the Vision Committee process. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take a small break already because as is our brave new world, all our virtual friends cannot hear us at this moment. So we're just going to work on those technical difficulties. They're saying yes, they're nodding. Oh, you can hear now?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. I'm just going to give a little bit of background, go over the ground rules. I will be brief because, as Steve said, this is really about hearing from the community right now. By way of background, in January of 2019, the board appointed nearly 160 community members to serve as part of an airport visioning process to envision the next 30 years of the Aspen-Picken County Airport. After 18 months of 5 different working groups and hundreds of hours of meetings and thousands of hours of volunteer time, the ASE Vision Committee's final recommendations were presented to the board on April 16th of this year. Due to COVID-19, further consideration of the Vision Committee's recommendations were delayed until August. From August through November 4th, the board went through the Vision Committee recommendations over 8 different work sessions, paying special attention to Section 2 of the report, the ASE Community Value Summary, Section 3, Core Community Goals for the Picken County Aspen Airport, and Section 5, Recommendations to Achieve Our Community Goals. And Section 5 is where the board really spent most of its time. That section was made up of 15 recommendations and over 70 sub-recommendations. A red line of all changes the board recommended and hope to get comment on are available at www.pickencounty.com under the BOCC Airport Project tab. The document is available there. It includes a red line of all the proposed board changes. So tonight, we want to have as much time for public comment. So we're not going to go through those recommendations. We're not going to go through those changes because that would take a lot of time right now. But I do want to talk a little bit about the ground rules tonight. It's important that we acknowledge that the future of the airport is an issue that has brought our community's competing passions and ideas to the table. Disagreement and spirited discussion play a necessary role in the decisions that have made our community so successful. That said, for many, public speaking is difficult. And we ask that you please be respectful of each speaker's limited time to express their opinion. As you should have seen when you signed up to speak tonight, you'll be given, those of you that signed up will be given 5 minutes to make comments. Rich Englehart, who's sitting just to my right with his hand up here, has a timer. That timer will be displayed for speakers in the room. And then for speakers online, we will interrupt if you've exceeded that 5-minute time. We do not have presentations tonight, but if you do have written materials that you want to submit, you can again do that at www.pickenscounty.com and clicking on the Airport Project tab, and there will be click here to submit comments. And we have received a lot, and the board has been reviewing all of those. I would also note that we are going to try and have one in-person speaker speak and then have one of our Zoom speakers speak. Rich will be calling out the speakers for in the room here. And Andrew Shoemaker, who has disappeared but will be in this corner, is in the back, will be notifying folks on the Zoom call. Our audio should be working now. You'll be able to see the Zoom speakers on the screen if you're in the room. And then on Zoom, I believe you're getting the camera feed from speakers here. With that said, those are my comments. Again, we'll ask for courtesy as everyone has an opportunity to express their different opinions on this important issue for our community. And with that, Rich, do we have our first speaker?
We do.
And the speakers will come to the podium.
Okay.
We are cleaning, just so you know. Between each speaker, we'll be cleaning the podium and mic.
Okay, the first in-person speaker is going to be Ellen Anderson. And then Tim Murray will be our first Zoom speaker to follow. Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, I'm Ellen Anderson, and I'm ready. Okay. You've heard it before. The quote from Maya Angelou, "Do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better." Everyone involved in the ASE visioning process made the very best recommendations they could when final votes were taken earlier this year. But since then, a lot has changed, and we now know better. We now know that COVID has turned the world upside down, especially the travel and airline industries. Projections from early 2020 are no longer valid. The airline industry is experiencing financial devastation that will last for years, decades, and maybe forever. We now know that although the total number of daily flight operations at ASE have returned to pre-COVID numbers, the ratio of commercial operations to general aviation has plummeted. Commercial flight operations at ASE are now only about 1 in 10. The other 9 are general aviation. However, if we configure the airside to accommodate green commercial that may be available in the future, and that is we open Pandora's box to allow the possibility, open Pandora's box with the best of intentions, we risk the unintended consequence to allow the possibility of 9 not green private planes for every 1 green commercial. On some days, the number of flight operations here exceeds 200, 250, and even 300 flight operations in one day. 300 and 270 could be not green. We now know that allegations of bias on the part of some county-chosen consultants to achieve a specific outcome, that is, allow larger wingspans, are substantiated. 2 employees of the county's main aviation consultants have said their mandate from the county was to enable the airport to accept bigger planes, and one specifically mentioned the G650. We now know we have access to world-class authorities on exactly the issues we are grappling with, Amory Lovins and Tom Keogh. Their generous donations of expertise and time have not been welcomed. Indeed, they have been precluded from meeting directly with you, the county commissioners. We need to give them the opportunity to help you through in-depth, two-way conversations, which could include in those conversations your own experts. We now know there may be another choice for administration of ASE, local control of non-safety issues. This possibility has not been adequately considered or discussed, and it needs to be. We now know that of the 130 original volunteers for the ASE visioning process, only 63 voted in the end, and that's an attrition rate of over 50%. And we now know that of the 21 voting members of the Vision Committee, 4 members subsequently reversed their vote and now advocate an airside pause once they became aware of new information that they did not have at the time. We now know with 100% certainty that the workhorse of the commercial side, the CRJ 700, will be available to serve ASE for decades and has sound alternatives. We now know that the very basic tenet underlying the urgency of a new airside, the alleged loss of the CRJ 700 with no viable alternatives, is false. We now know getting hard data on air pollution with real measurements, not modeling, real measurements, and measurements taken in the right places has not been completed. These data are necessary before rational decisions can be made. Even though volunteers spent huge amounts of time, they simply did not have enough or correct information at the time. But now we know better, so it's time to do better. And doing better means pausing now, airside reconfiguration decisions until we have answers. It does not mean pausing obvious urgent changes such as converting to electric APUs, modernizing GA pilot training, or improving the terminal. Changing one's mind in the face of new information is not weakness. It is a sign of intelligence, wisdom, and I dare say, courage. One more observation. Have you noticed when you cross from Garfield and Eagle counties into Pickens County, you see dramatically less density and development? Think going past Willits up into Pickens County. That's a direct result of the commissioners in the 1970s, Edwards, Shellman, and Kinsley, having the courage to make the controversial decision to enact the growth management plan. Now, you 5 commissioners have a similar opportunity to make a monumental decision to save the soul of Pickens County. One last thing. Here's a quote we all know. It's from the Eagles song, Last Resort, written in 1977. We love the Eagles. Remember when they lived here? It's about the same time, that song was written, about the same time, the commissioners passed the growth management plan. And the quote is, call someplace paradise and kiss it goodbye. Don't be the commissioners who kiss it goodbye. Be the commissioners who have the courage to keep paradise by voting pause on airside decisions until we have better information in this new world order.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, Tim Murray is going to be our next Zoom, and then coming up to the podium will be Mayor Tory. Okay, Mayor, why don't you go ahead and come on up, and we'll pass by this one, and we'll come back to the next Zoom. Is there a Mary Ann Kipper?
Are we allowed to take a mask off here?
Yes, you can.
Is that okay? All right. Thanks. Hi. I want to bring a little positivity. I want to say thank yous. I want to say thank yous, obviously, to the committee members that served for months on end. I want to thank the citizens that went above and beyond those committee meetings and have been really putting out some great information for us all to absorb. And mostly, I want to thank the commissioners. I feel more positive about the process and the potential today than I have in the last 2 years. And a lot of that is credit to you. A lot of information has come to you recently, and I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to take a second to evaluate it on your own and to work again with the community in this kind of outreach forum, and I think you deserve a lot of credit for that, so thank you very much. I speak for myself, but others as well, that we feel very encouraged by the fact that you are creating this outreach program and continuing it right now. This is difficult. You are doing an amazing job of balancing safety, environment, quality of life, and managed growth, along with economics, service, and efficiency. Yesterday, we received a letter from Chair Steve Childs and Kelly, the Vice Chair, encouraging our input. And I just want to say that I hope and I encourage you to reach out to all the municipalities in your county and get that same input from them as well. Truly, the impacts of what is called a county-operated airport are going to be felt by every resident of this valley. I also am here to encourage a collaborative effort for the vision of the airport business center, and mass transit in our valley as well. I think master planning and collaborative effort here will go a long way for all of our successes. I want you to be patient with the decisions that will last lifetimes, not just a lifetime, but lifetimes. I want to commend you on what you've done with the work of the Vision Committee's recommendations, some of the amendments that you have done there. Most primarily, I want to commend you on Goal 7, which is to redevelop the terminal. That is what we are looking for in the immediate term. I also want to commend you for your approach to goal number 13 about leaving the runway where it is. The opportunity to move the taxiway is something that I think has more value than talking about moving the runway at this time. Again, I'm here somewhat unprepared for these comments as I'm preparing for another meeting across the street. But I just wanted to say I really appreciate the work and the extra work that you and others have put into this. I feel more encouraged now, and I feel like we're on a good path to a good solution for our valley and beyond. And I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. So Andrew, did we get Tim Murray back up? Okay. Was there a Marion Kipper? Those people were not on. They're not on. Okay. Yes, let's go to John Bennett.
Unmute. Am I on? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So thanks, Rich. As pilot of the Airport Vision Committee, I believe strongly in the committee's recommendations. I want to also say on a personal note, I've never been a fan of a bigger airport. In 1995, as mayor of Aspen, I strongly and publicly opposed an airport expansion plan then, and I do so today where that plan proposed again. The do-nothing solution was probably the best choice back then, but our situation today is radically different. Why do I say that? Two main reasons: the existential crisis of climate change and the exponential growth of airport noise. Despite differences of opinion about our airport future, most of us actually agree on the fundamentals. One fundamental is that today's airport is unquestionably dirty and noisy. Our greenhouse gas and other pollution emissions are way too high. Airport neighbors and skiers at the bottom of Buttermilk can smell aircraft exhaust fumes, and aggravating airport noise is lowering the quality of life for way too many residents. But today we're beginning to see solutions to these challenges. New airliners exist now that would cut our CO2 emissions by 60% compared to today's CRJ 700, and they'd cut noise by a similar amount. These are dramatic reductions. And electric-powered airliners will be quieter still when they arrive in a couple of decades. But here's the problem. These new, quieter, cleaner aircraft have wingspans greater than 95 feet, so they can't land in Aspen. The Vision Committee concluded if we want cleaner, quieter airliners of today and tomorrow, we need to accommodate wider wings at our airport. So here's the challenge we face. How do we accommodate cleaner, quieter planes with wider wings without ending up with an unrestrained big airport that could also attract dirty, noisy planes that nobody wants? The Vision Committee's solution is to negotiate with airlines and ask them to agree that a dozen years from now, when our new airport would be completed, and not until then, they would use, or they will then use, only their cleaner, quieter planes here. Of course, the FAA won't allow us to require this of airlines, and simply becoming a localized private airport won't work either. We looked deeply at that idea, but aviation legal experts told us there's nothing to stop us from negotiating voluntary legal agreements. Would airlines agree? We think they might. I'll give an example of Delta Airlines. They're already flying the Airbus A220-100, a plane with 60% lower CO2 emissions and way less noise than the CRJ-700. We'd be saying to Delta, we'll build this beautiful new terminal for you and your customers. You'll get great gates, waiting areas, maybe an airline club, and a lot of other stuff you want. All we ask is that 12 years from now, we'd like you to serve Aspen with your most fuel efficient, quiet, and profitable aircraft, one that you already have and your customers love. That might not be such an impossible negotiation, and it certainly wouldn't hurt to try. So far, I've been talking about cleaner, quieter airliners, but what about private aircraft? Well, many of our nearly 100 recommendations would apply to private aviation as well. Some examples: a reservation system for private planes to avoid too many arriving at once, increased aeronautical spacing, spread planes out to enhance safety by reducing the peak flow rate of aircraft, and peak hour congestion pricing for private planes. All these kinds of measures would result in fewer peak hour flights in high season, a safety feature in itself. We'd also electrify the airfield and eliminate noisy, smelly APUs. We'd use carbon-based landing fees to make dirty planes pay for their pollution, and we'd move parked aircraft farther away from homes to reduce noise further. We recommended other measures specifically to reduce greenhouse gas and other emissions: an airport solar farm and biofuel facilities, a net zero construction for a beautiful new terminal, direct airline routes that reduce CO2 emissions and save energy, and continual real-time monitoring and modeling of airport emissions. To help manage growth, our new terminal would have only 7 gates instead of today's 8 to avoid the cruise ship syndrome. If you put all this together, I am completely convinced that the Vision Committee's Common Ground recommendations would achieve all 4 of our core community goals for the new airport: to enhance safety, substantially reduce greenhouse gas and other emissions, substantially reduce noise, and manage future airline enplanement growth. Quite simply, we could create the most green and sustainable airport our size anywhere in the world and improve our quality of life while we're at it. And I find that really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, let's see. Our next up is Tom Keogh. And then next Zoom is going to be Emery Levins.
Everyone, I'm going to just flip this, if it's all right. I'm thankful for the opportunity to come before you today and offer another opinion. I've spent a lot of time working on this kind of a project, and I think it's interesting that many of the things that I've run into in the past on both an international basis and on a domestic basis are applicable to what's happening here in Aspen now. Some of them have been very successful. Some of them had to go back and have a retry. But nonetheless, the objectives that I've heard with regard to the Aspen project are achievable. There is no doubt about it. I think from what my participation has been as an observer, there certainly have been opportunities for us to move in another direction or maybe dig a little deeper on something. And I think that's what I want to talk about today. I was ready to present a totally different presentation yesterday, and I thought, that presentation is not getting the essence across of what I would like to present here. What I would like to present is not anything that is contrary to what's being done, but by my experience, and that's going back 20 years of this, just a snapshot of my background. I've been a 30,000-hour pilot. I've been involved in a lot of redos of airports and in new airports. I'm heavily involved in the major cargo airport being built in Asia right now. You learn something at every turn. So hopefully some of the things that I've learned can be applied here. And to make this presentation the way I felt I wanted it to be today, I went back last night late and this morning and went through notes that we had, how we had prepared and developed other theses for other airports elsewhere, some of which were very similar to this. Innsbruck, Austria was very similar. The airport in Alaska that we did, and I mean they're similar in terms of canyon approaches where you have the granite clouds all around you and you're trying to get into a relatively small area. So I thought the best way maybe to tackle my presentation here was to ask some questions. You know, these are questions I picked off of the previous work we'd done, and they're questions that occur to me that need to be addressed here. Not things that are contrary, but rather how deep do we have to go to get to where we need to be. So I think let's start with some of these. I started off with two of the biggest subjects that I think I've heard that are the key ones that the Vision Group wanted to have a look at. Environmental is absolutely critical, and safety is the other one. There are a plethora of other issues that have to be addressed, to be sure. But let's talk about those two right near, and I'll read a little bit of this just to keep moving on it and to get my time in here. The environmental situation is really something that has to be taken very seriously, and the answers are there today. They're not new, we've just got to apply them. But we've got to recognize where we're starting from, and where we're starting from right now, as far as I know, has to be yet established. So we've got to establish those parameters of where we're starting with on noise and on pollution, and those things can all be addressed. And I think they should be, so that we know where we're starting from and how to address them. I think we need to take a look at the safety issues. I'm hard-pressed to find where the specific safety issues have been addressed and what the responses have been. We need to know exactly where we're starting from on the safety issues, and there's a lot of them. I have a very, in the job I do now, close association with the FAA. And I've asked the FAA on the other tasks that I'm doing some very pertinent questions to what we're doing here in Aspen. And the FAA, I can assure you, are anxious to find well-developed changes to that we want to happen in the Aspen area. They're ready, and they're ready technically, and they're ready financially. So if we can get that plan put together, and the digging down that has to be done so that we don't have a bunch of questions to come back to, but rather a plan that's approved as we go into it. And that's why we should have a stronger relationship with the FAA than that I'm aware of has been the case to date. So there's safety and environment, all can be changed quickly and effectively. There are other subjects too, localization or privatization. That needs to be addressed. That is one of the ones I've been involved in previously, and I'm out of time. But there's a lot of issues that we can be addressing here. I'm going to make available the comments I have for anybody who wants them, and thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the time to speak today. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, Emery Levens is up. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Your proposed airside path will cost nearly $2 million for each second I'm allowed to address you today. So let me tersely outline why setting a course now to rebuild the airside for ADG-3 planes is premature and imprudent. It might be a good idea, but we don't know that yet. The push to act now rests on old CRJ 700 retirement forecasts, wrong by 20 plus years, and so discredited they nearly vanished, plus a false claim of no alternatives. Just 6 days ago, you were told there's no alternative jet. Yet your own aviation consultants admitted the newer CRJ 900 does meet ASE's technical requirements that 8 years of their studies had claimed it failed. Thus, it was wrongly excluded. 6 days ago, you were also told the Dash 8 Q400 isn't readily available. It's actually current and in hot demand. It was popular, reliable, and competitive, serving Aspen for 8 years until just 4 years ago. So both parts of the fleet turnover rationale are unsound. A separate and valid goal, cleaner, quieter operations, is said to need certain next-generation planes with wingspans over 95 feet. But some revolutionary new planes emerging from more than 100 firms achieve super efficiency without long wings. 3 spectacularly clean, quiet, low-cost flight-tested models have 52 to 70-foot wingspans. 2 aim for 2022 and 2025 deliveries, not in decades. They blow away Aspen's noise and emissions goals and could blow up the commercial and general aviation business model. They could fly daily nonstops from Aspen to dozens of cities before our airside could be rebuilt for the bigger old-style planes they would make obsolete. If that revolution were delayed, the now reascended CRJ series, and if needed, the Dash 8, provide ample insurance. So the process meant to look 30 years ahead didn't see 5. We're at risk of building the wrong airside for bigger planes flown hub and spoke, not smaller planes point to point. We're accelerating into a fog bank when there's no rush to go anywhere. But exploiting today's aviation revolution could solve both the minor commercial part and the dominant general aviation part of our airport's challenges if we localize control and charge for airside parking by area and congestion. Maybe even surcharging big wingspans for the cost they impose on all users could be a permissibly rational differentiation so small planes don't unjustly cross-subsidize big planes. Now, commissioners, did you know that a clear statutory process lets FAA allow non-grandfathered airports to regulate noise? That our localization option does exist and merits careful study and would not make FAA grants get clawed back? That San Juan's airport's claimed $16 million cost to switch to private ownership was actually about $2 million? If not, a reason might be that, except for a few brief public comments like today, only experts picked and instructed by your staff have been allowed to brief you or Vision participants. That means no fact-checking and no second opinions. A monopolized, and we're now told agenda-driven process can't inspire or merit public confidence. Your decisions can only be as unbiased as your information. So to help augment and sometimes correct what you've been told, 2 volunteer aviation experts and I recorded an independent forum streamed on Grassroots TV. My thanks to those who have viewed it. If anything surprised you, I'm glad we could help. Aviation peer reviewers in industry and government have all validated and praised our analysis. I again warmly invite you, commissioners, to hold a public discussion with our expert group plus yours. We'll gladly share what we know if you choose to hear us. 2 final thoughts. You propose to create an airport layout plan over the next year or 2, during, not before, planned stakeholder and environmental work. 3 of you said those outcomes might make you rethink, but rethinking would impugn the clarity and resolve that staff wants to signal to FAA, so you would feel boxed in and bound to continue. Thus, your proposal isn't a pause, it's a preemptive launch. For now, perhaps for a decade, the right airside answer is neither of the above, not until we've learned enough to be confident the risks outweigh the benefits. Your item 12 proposes to proceed once you understand the very things the vision process had supposedly figured out, implying it hadn't, so you're now back to square one. But to get to square one, you need correct basic facts, clear logic, and a truly open process to elicit, test, and refine them. So I respectfully suggest you do 6 things differently. Genuinely pause your staff recommended ALP start until you agree on what you really want. Discuss novel or disputed facts and options with outside experts as well as your own. Explore localization promptly and rigorously, not by speculation and rumors. Get expert and respected representation to open a creative.
Okay, Emery, time's up.
I will put the rest in a written comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Emery. Okay, next one up here to the podium will be Jackie Merrill. And then Andrew Doremus will be next on Zoom.
Oh, okay. It's just if I talk slowly, it's a problem. So my name is Jackie Merrill. I'm a 30-year-plus Aspen resident and was a member of the Vision Committee. And I want to make 2 points that I think require additional attention. But first, Greg, I want to thank you from me as a neophyte for really assuring me that you want to hear all of us talk. And also to Kelly, who said, you listened and watched everything. That's no small feat, and I know that from my own experience. So the 2 points are, 1, GA management of operations and local public control. So throughout the Vision Committee process, I was puzzled by most of our times being spent on commercial traffic, given the fact that they're at least historically 25%, given the fact that currently, at least last summer, GA traffic was up to 90%, and that only one accident ever involved a commercial plane. That left out of 1, maybe 50, around that number in as many years, that involved private aircraft. Now, I trust the commercial airline manufacturers to come up with the cleanest and quietest planes that exist, without any help from us. I trust also that, well, I don't, that the GA management problems with their diverse, used and new, smaller and bigger, entities involving fractional, private, and charter aircraft is a different problem and challenges a lot of our goals. So when I asked why all this focus on the commercial, I was told there really wasn't much we could do on the private side. I said, wait, let me see, let me get this right. We're solving 25% of the problem? I am tremendously worried that the large profits on the GA side will trump, pardon the pun, essential study of our GA management options. And I am fearful that if we neglect such research, that will trump our chances of getting our airport right. And that involves a pause. Now, my husband, Jay Hughes, was on the Experience Committee. He had an interesting time of it because at every meeting, at the risk of repeating himself, he was asking why GA management wasn't on the agenda as the biggest challenge, past, present, and future. He thinks, you see, the FAA non-discriminatory clause negatively impacts the visitor's experience with commercial arrivals and departures. He was told repeatedly that that was not relevant to the agenda of the Experience Committee. So on localization, I think Tom said some 28 airports around the country have been pursuing those options with the FAA to gain control of the non-safety issues. I do not yet know enough to opine pro or con, but I do absolutely understand that localization will help us achieve all our goals, and I'll give you 3 examples. Inform airline and GA options around noise, pollution, and control, and carbon, to mandate increased private training, a major safety issue, and to reprioritize landing and takeoffs schedules to balance private and commercial. And just like Amory said, I want to underline the cost. Some of you may have misheard, 16 million. It's closer to 2 million. And Kelly, thanks again for your interest in more details on the benefits and the disadvantages of localization. I share that interest, but it cannot be discovered without a pause. And that is why I advocate for that button. To get that information, the commissioners must discuss it with knowledgeable and experienced experts. And to those who say we can continue to investigate this while making other recommendations, I disagree, especially if we've already started to talk with the FAA. My friends in high places in the aviation and the FAA tell me that we do not ever want to go back to the FAA with amendments after we've made proposals. Plus, a very savvy bird told me that the FAA would welcome our idea of localization. Okay.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, Andrew Doremus.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. First, I want to echo John Bennett's comments, and I appreciate it, and I stand behind what he said and what our group spent, oh my gosh, months and months and hundreds of hours working on. Thank you, John. One. Two, my concern is we are overlooking our main priority that we started with, was to make our airport safer. We are all worried about electric drones and 4-engine airplanes and this and that 20 years out. We have an opportunity right now to make the airport safer, and that is the 400 feet separation and the 150-foot wide runway. I've been flying in and out of Aspen for 40 years as a professional pilot, flown everything from gliders to 4-engine jets. I've seen runway excursions and what happens. I remember when I think it was Merv Griffin's airplane had a runway excursion and ran into 2 airplanes. I, in good conscience, can't continue to think that we should not make the runway safer. I would not be comfortable knowing 10 years down the road, we leave it as it is and we have a tragedy. This is something the commissioners seem to be putting aside. We're all talking about the future of electric airplanes, the future of this, the future of that. What about now and what's happening? The other issue regarding the taxiways crossing to the west side for additional parking is a safety hazard, is really not founded. 99% of the airports that pilots fly to throughout the country and the world have crossing runways. It's like coming to an intersection in your car. We know as drivers, you look both ways. The pilots do the same thing. It's not a safety issue. So real briefly, I just want to stress to the commissioners, let's rethink safety. Let's rethink the environment, as John said, and all the good plans that we put forth about biofuels, carbon tax, all these things that we were going to present that will make our airport safer and a better place. We're getting bogged down in things that we have discussed. We've had professionals bring all the information to us, and I know there's 2 sides to every story, absolutely. But for right now, my concern is don't overlook the safety, don't overlook the opportunity. It's going to be 10, 12 years before we do this. The FAA is wise. If we say, yes, let's move forward, and then the time comes to do this, and we say, well, because of what's happened, we're going to adjust it. But we have to make the decision, take the Vision Committee's recommendation, and let's move forward. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, Barry Vaughn. And then Mark Friedberg will be the next Zoom meeting attendee.
Good evening. I'm Barry Vaughn of El Jabal. Amory Lovins has recently been critical of the airport vision process. Remember when he told us last fall we should design the airport for much longer wings? Well, now he's walked that back and is against widening the runway, at least for now. Untroubled by this about-face, he describes the work of the county's experts as being unprofessional and biased, or in his words, an instance of the itinerant musician's motto, whose bread I eat, his song I sing. I disagree. During my 32 years of lawyering, my livelihood depended on my ability to distinguish between the spin doctor and the straight shooter. That's Alex Siebold. That's Mike Herman. That's Bill Tomsich. And the other experts, all the other experts who helped us on this project, they're pros, they're honest, and they tell it like it is. They are not biased. Lovin's sidekick Tom Keogh has also criticized the vision process, intimating that the participants didn't know enough about aviation to make good decisions and were easily led. That's understandable. It can be hard to get good info on a person's qualifications. Keogh, for example, says he was hired long ago as an airline transport pilot. I don't doubt it. But according to the FAA pilot registry, he's only a commercial pilot with a Canadian license, not qualified to fly for hire in the U.S. Maybe the registry is wrong. Maybe I'm not reading the right entry. I don't know, but like I said, it can be hard to get good info on a person's qualifications. The Vision Group actually did include several pilots. Your speaker included some with substantial flight time and advanced qualifications. Two of them, Andrew DeRamus and Joe Driscoll, like Keogh, are airline transport pilots with years of experience. The other participants included a lot of highly intelligent, very well-educated, successful people. They're not dummies, and they're not sheep. So to put it mildly, these criticisms of the vision process, in my opinion, are entirely without merit. Turning to privatization, once again, the persistent argument that this would free Pitkin County from the FAA's non-discrimination rule is nonsense. Lovin says 28 airports have privatized since 2010 or pursued privatization, with more on the way. Not true. 12 have tried it, 8 backed out, only 2 are doing it, and neither has shed the FAA non-discrimination rule. That's what the lawyers from Holland and Knight told us. Keogh and Lovins also tout John Wayne Airport as being privatized. It isn't. It's county-owned and operated on an enterprise basis, just like the Aspen Airport. John Wayne does have a complex and comprehensive aircraft access and noise program, but there's no more local control in that program than there is here in Aspen. If you want to find out about it, ask Holland and Knight or Kimley Horn. Just don't think it's a way to get out from under the FAA's prohibition on unjust discrimination, because it isn't. Finally, let's talk safety. We're all in favor of safety. We all agree that it's our #1 priority. Now, what are the principal safety deficiencies at the airport? Runway taxiway separation and runway width. We've got a 100-foot wide runway where it should be 150 feet. We've got 320 feet of separation where the standard is 400. Remember, that's center line to center line. If you've got a Gulfstream 5 with a wingspan of 94 feet sitting on the taxiway, while another G5 is landing on the runway, that's only 226 feet of separation, wingtip to wingtip, as they pass. That ain't much. An aircraft on a 30-degree runway excursion at 100 knots will close that distance in about 2.6 seconds. That's what runway taxiway separation is for, increasing that distance and reducing the risk of collision when pilots lose control of the aircraft and veer off the runway. Some have expressed concern about the overrun risk at the end of runway 15 and the threat to buttermilk, well over 1,300 feet away. But they've ignored the excursion risk to the much closer ramp and terminal. That, I believe, is a mistake. Excursions are rare, thank God, but they're real. They've happened here before. Like Andrew said, remember back in '88 when Sally Field got doused with jet fuel when Merv Griffin's Challenger lost control on takeoff and crashed into 3 aircraft parked on the ramp? They were lucky there wasn't a fire or people in those other planes that got hit. If you agree that safety is our #1 priority, but you're against widening the runway and increasing runway taxiway separation, you might ask yourself, am I being a hypocrite? You can't say safety is your highest priority and then put community character above it. Forget about when the CRJ 700 is going away. Either safety is your top priority or it isn't. This board and this community have an opportunity to improve safety at our airport. We shouldn't be the ones who sacrificed airport safety on the altar of community character, who failed to take reasonable steps to prevent the tragedy that might occur if a cabin class or bizjet aircraft plowed onto a busy ramp or into the terminal. It would be even safer to stick with the EA Fonzie we've got and move the runway centerline 80 feet further away from the taxiway ramp and terminal. We've learned that this option would actually be cheaper. Yes, it would mean more construction time, but it would also avoid the cost and delay of a new environmental assessment. Let's not just pay lip service to airport safety. Unless we're using safety as a cover to push other agendas, let's actually make the airport safer. Let's widen and move the runway as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, Mark Friedberg.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good afternoon. I just have a very few brief comments. I have incredible respect for all the diligent work that's gone into studying all the respective issues and some of the conclusions that you've reached. I just want to relate that I moved here 40 years ago from the Newport Beach area. And there was a huge controversy about what was then the Orange County Airport and now known as the John Wayne Airport in terms of its expansion and what it would do to the environment. And needless to say, 40 years later, the pollution and all the environmental degradation that's occurred in Newport Beach has been irreversible and continues to get worse. The jets leaving that airport climb at 25% just to try and accelerate and get elevation. And so my comment is just that I think that agreement with the FAA and the airlines, who have incredible power and money, is very, very difficult and arbitrary in terms of thinking you have leverage. Once the barn doors open and we allow the change to occur, there will be no harnessing the impacts. And as someone who is deeply vested in this environment, as we all are, while the safety issues and those other considerations are important, I think the degradation of this environment by having planes come into this very narrow valley area in a fashion, whether they're quiet or unquiet, is going to determine the future of the quality of life in this valley. And so I respect your ability to weigh all these issues, but I did want to give you that feedback, and thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, commissioners, can you hear on Zoom? Okay, thumbs up. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, next to the podium, Bill Thompson. And then Kate Spencer will speak next on Zoom.
I'm going to restart that.
Yes, I will. Thank you. All right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Tomsich. Been working on air service issues here for nearly 25 years and also served on the technical working group where we did extensively study a lot of different alternatives, every conceivable alternative that could be considered for this airport in the future. I feel like I've also been a strong source of good quality, accurate information in terms of foretelling some of the changes that are coming. And most importantly, I want to echo some of the comments made earlier by Mayor Tory and thank the Board of County Commissioners for all of their very thoughtful and diligent proceedings here. I thought there's some really good questions. I've watched every minute of every proceeding that has taken place, and hats off to you guys for the direction you're headed. I feel really comfortable with where we're going right now. I know you've put a lot of work into this, as have many other volunteers. I also want to underscore that change happens. Change has been happening, throughout my 25 years here. Change is going to continue to occur, and I think we need to be prepared for more future change. Some earlier consultants that came out with a study back in 2014 were criticized for being off in terms of their expected retirement of the CRJ 700. There was a reason for that. It's because Bombardier and SkyWest Airlines figured out a floor beam modification that would breathe some additional life into that aircraft. Thank goodness they did. For that reason, we do have another decade or so of CRJ 700 service, at least from the two remaining operators who are incumbent Airlines of America and United, all to be operated by SkyWest. I mentioned during some testimony earlier this summer on August 17th that Delta's service was hanging by a thread, that their CRJ 700 fleet was disappearing. It was down to just 3 aircraft, which it remains as such today, and that there was a possibility we might see an Embraer E175 as a potential future aircraft in this marketplace. Less than a week ago, you saw an E175, some of you for yourself, doing some test flights from SkyWest Airlines. So that is another example of change that is likely to occur. That is part of the do-nothing alternative because that aircraft does fit within this airport's runway dimensions. Whether or not it's going to have the performance to reliably operate and perform the same missions that the CRJ 700 does remains to be seen, but it is being studied. Other aircraft that have been studied but dismissed over the years include several that have been mentioned recently, and I apologize that there's been some confusion in terms of some other alternatives that might exist, but let me address the CRJ 900. Actually, let me just remind you that Alex Siebold addressed that very question on September 16th as to why it would never work at the Aspen Airport. Let me, instead of reiterating what he says, we'll simply mention that there are two potential operators. Both have looked at the CRJ 900 for Aspen, Mesa on behalf of American and SkyWest on behalf of Delta. None of them have been comfortable in trying to get that aircraft to operate here, nor does it operate in any other mountain airport, not Eagle, not Gunnison. The only mountain airport in Colorado the CRJ 900 operates in is Montrose, because it has the performance to fly there. The Q400 has been talked about as an option. You know, that flew in here by Frontier Airlines from 2008 until 2012 for 4 years from Denver. And then Republic also operated on behalf of United Express for almost 2 years, from 2014 to January of 2016. Both have since gotten rid of that aircraft. It's not a great fit. And the reason that aircraft is not a great fit for these airlines is its sweet spot is on missions less than 300 miles. Frontier told me when they got rid of the Q400s, they love Aspen, but they're not going to revolve their entire fleet around one airport. There just aren't enough markets like Aspen within 300 miles of Denver. So that's the reason the Q400 rarely operates. There's only one remaining U.S. operator of the Q400, and that's Horizon up in Seattle, where they are a still operated fleet of 26 aircraft, which once numbered as many as 108. So those aircraft are pretty much on their way out. There are also a couple of Canadian operators that continue to operate that aircraft. And finally, the CRJ 550 was mentioned. That is basically a retrofitted CRJ 700 with 50 seats. I just had a chance to fly in one myself the week before last between Chicago and Cincinnati. Great onboard passenger experience. You can actually store your carry-ons in closets. They've got 10 first-class seats, 20 in Economy Plus. But it's a 70-passenger aircraft configured for 50 seats, meaning the carbon emissions per passenger are actually 40% more than in a 70-passenger CRJ 700. So that is obviously not in alignment with some of the state community goals. So I want to just close my remarks by thanking you again. Let's be prepared for change. Change is going to come again, and let's not lock ourselves into commitments based on what we know today. Even though we know a lot, we know that more change is still coming. Thank you very much.
Okay, Kate Spencer.
Hi. My name is Kate Spencer, and I live in Aspen Village. I'm a physical therapist and mom to 2 daughters, 3.5 and 9 months. My husband and I spent 10 winters here as seasonal PTs before settling here full-time in 2017. I was a member of the focus for the ASE Vision process. This was my first foray into local government. I wanted to represent my peers who don't have the time or support to attend numerous meetings, but do have an interest in the Aspen Airport expansion. These people include hospital employees whose shifts don't allow for attendance, restaurant and bar owners and staff, teachers, anyone who can't get childcare for the meetings but live in and love our valley. I also wanted to represent Aspen Village as we are in the flight path. It was exciting and invigorating to be in a room of people who have largely shaped our valley's growth, and I really enjoyed the presentations from experts as well as learning about the numerous master plans. I appreciate the opportunity that was given to us as a community to give input, as it wasn't required by the BOCC, and it sounds like it wasn't exactly encouraged by the FAA. During the year that I was involved, I became absolutely opposed to the Runway and Taxiway expansion based on the information presented to me, despite feeling like the collective process was trying to convince me otherwise. I was unimpressed and disappointed with the final recommendations by the Vision Committee, and I believe more educated voices should be heard. More research has been done, and many of the facts and projections presented last year are simply not true or have changed. In addition, the airline world has changed with a global pandemic. Thank you to the BOCC for approving the ASE terminal to go ahead as that is necessary. I am thankful for the pause on the runway move, and I encourage you to also pause on the taxiway. We don't need large, dirty, and loud aircraft coming in and out of ASE on a regular basis. That is what will happen if we expand the runway and taxiway now. We cannot control every aircraft that flies in and out, and a large percentage of our flights are private. I do believe that the airlines will adapt to our airport for the next 20, 30, 40 years if needed, because Aspen is a destination. By then, perhaps we will actually have quieter, more energy efficient aircraft that can fly into here. At that point, we can do research like the noise and air pollution studies, which have not been completed, and thoughtfully plan an airport that is green, safe, and does not promote large numbers of loud, stinky, and noisy aircraft. My 2 children, both Aspen locals, will appreciate the time and thoughtfulness that was put into this, I promise you, as we appreciate the work of previous commissioners who prevented us from becoming Vail. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, Michael Miracle. And then next up on Zoom is going to be Kirk Henderberger.
I'm not going to go 5 minutes, don't worry. Okay. We'll see if I can be the fastest. I'm glad that I got a little space between me and Tori because I'm actually going to say some very similar things to what he said, which is, I watched every meeting. I watched Amory's meeting. I think I've taken this in and paid attention to it about as close as anyone. And what I have been most struck by is just what a thorough and dedicated job that you have done as commissioners. This unfolded in some ways simultaneously to I think me, along with many other people, kind of switching back to obsessing over the looming presidential election. And I was struck by just how lucky we are with the politicians we have. And, the way you treat each other, the thoroughness of your thought, the fact that you did, I think, and continue to consider a lot of the differing points of view that you're hearing. And I find myself sitting here listening now, feeling like that people are asking you to do the things that you're doing and that you will continue to do. And so I would just encourage you to continue to do what you're doing, to do it in the deliberate way. I think some people are using pause kind of euphemistically, but I think that the way you are proceeding, that you are doing it so deliberately and slowly and thoughtfully and with a willingness to adapt to information as it comes to you, that the pause is not really necessary. Like I feel like that there's a euphemistic pause and then there's a, do this the right way, and I feel that you are doing it that way. And you've asked questions that have been really rooted in humanity, environmentalism, and I just encourage you to keep going as you have been going, because it's really been impressive to watch. Thank you.
Okay, Kirk Henderberger.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kirk Henderberger, and I live out at North 40, directly across Highway 82 from the airport with my wife and 2 children. Due to our proximity to the airport, I've been quite interested in this process. I've been following and contributing to this process since the environmental assessment and participated on the community character work group. As you can probably guess, my comments focus on the environmental impacts of the airport. Primarily how residents of the North 40 and greater West Aspen community are affected by fumes and noise on a regular basis. The fumes we experience out here present a safety issue for residents of all ages, especially children, and the impact on our community will only increase as we add more housing out here, like the firehouse and lumberyard employee housing. I'm hoping the potential redevelopment of the airport will include changes that reduce the noise and fumes we experience here on a daily basis. As such, I'm focusing my comments today on the second goal and subsequent recommendations of the draft proposal. And that reads, maximize the sustainability of our new airport. And this can be found on pages 5 and 6 of the packet. The first thing I noticed when reading that is that really a lot of items are lumped together, and including carbon emissions, local pollutants, noise, light, water, waste, etc. I do suggest spelling some of these items out specifically in the goal itself. And I also would like to suggest a few other items that didn't get in there, a few of the other suggestions or recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, I was part of the community character group and did help add some of those items. some of the things I think are still missing are, number one, I'd really like to see environmental stewardship added to the mission of the airport. Like any business, the airport has a mission statement. And I believe environmental stewardship is missing from there. It is a part of Pickton County's mission. I think that if that was added, that could really help bring the idea of environmental stewardship to the forefront of any decision making at the airport. Number two, I really want to drive home the idea of monitoring. Monitoring was a big part in all the discussions we had, not just modeling air quality, but actually having monitoring stations at the airport and around town. And not only today to get a good benchmark, but also in perpetuity out into the future. We really, and that especially is important because we have some hard numbers we're trying to reach in our goals, and we're not going to know if we've achieved them or not without the right data. Next, number three, specifically looking at PDUs, and this is something that I've really thought about and looked into a lot living out here. I know that one of the items is electrifying the airport. I'd suggest clarifying that really specifically to say electrifying, adding hookups for PDUs, electrical hookups, and also if that isn't an option initially, to at least put in place some of the infrastructure when work's done. And then also potentially looking at a maximum runtime for PDUs. There's an idling law in Aspen. You can only idle for so long. Why isn't there a similar law for planes or rule for planes that limits their PDU idling? And next would be potentially creating a designated area for planes to use their PDUs, potentially kind of further away from the residents here. And then also, I know that it had been discussed moving the FBO to the Owl Creek side. As a resident, it might be a little selfish over here, but again, as a safety measure of all the people that live here, and as we add more people out here, the idea of moving the FBO over to the Owl Creek side would actually, I believe, help with some of the fumes and exhausts we get out here. And then obviously building a berm or blast wall is a recommendation, just as like a longer term idea of making sure that there's a proper setback away from 82 when that's done, for the potential of building a separate berm on the CMC side of 82 and not creating a tunnel effect if that were to happen. Next, looking at a few more ideas for that, for recommendations. In talking to someone at Atlantic Aviation, I know they've already electrified a lot of the ground fleet, but there's still more to go. So again, further clarifying the existing item of electrifying the airport, electrifying not just PDUs, but also the ground fleet.
Kirk, your time.
Okay. And then just to summarize, I really want to thank everybody and all the input we've been able to provide, and look forward to the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. And I'd remind everybody that written comments still can be submitted. So if you don't get through it, the commissioners will take those in full. Okay, Valerie Braun. And then next up on Zoom is Mona Newton.
Well, my name is Valerie Braun, and I live in Woody Creek. I'm a member of the Aspen Vision Committee and the author of the minority report presented to the BOCC along with the common ground recommendations from the Aspen Vision process. I believe that with the introduction of other viewpoints finally being allowed into the public conversation with regard to the expansion and redevelopment at Aspen Airport, the best possible course of action has been revealed. No one could have foreseen the COVID pandemic and the chaos it has created in national and world economies and the catastrophic effects it has had on the airline and other travel sectors, and thus it was not considered during the Aspen Vision process. However, our reality is what it is. This is a time to make rational and realistic decisions. To my way of thinking, this is not the time to make radical changes to the airside configuration at the Aspen Airport. The widening and strengthening of the airport would allow for much larger general aviation aircraft to operate in our community. There would be no going back from that decision. This would not be in the best interest of the inhabitants of our valley, both human and wildlife, nor in the best interests of the environment. What does make very good sense is to pause, use that word, pause, on that decision and focus on the concept of localization. That is, having control over all non-safety decisions and operations. Working as partners with the FAA instead of having to be at the mercy of the federal FAA mandates and rules that simply do not benefit the operations of our particular airport. If the county negotiates this new status with the FAA, creates an Aspen Airport Board of Directors, along with a professional management team, and with community input, it could potentially make a decision such as expand the runway. Allowing new generation, energy efficient, and environmentally improved commercial aircraft to operate while restricting through locally issued mandates on the size, type, noise, and emission status of general aviation aircraft that could operate here, thereby eliminating the oppressive FAA federal decree that any size commercial aircraft allowed opens the door for any equivalent general aviation aircraft. The Aspen Airport simply will never have the parking room for larger general aviation aircraft that would want to operate here on an expanded runway. It would only create more so-called stop and drop operations with the effect of increasing overall numbers of operations at the airport. Under localization, it could be possible to create regulations and fee structures to cull out concerning aircraft and unqualified pilots. We could potentially require all pilots flying into Aspen to be FAA certified for special approach, to have had at least a simulator experience with FAA-approved landing and departure procedures. In other words, be prepared for the rigors of ASE. The community wants the Aspen Airport to be the safest, most environmentally healthy, efficient, and financially feasible airport possible. The Aspen Vision process is not complete. There is finally a remarkably simple step the county can take to create a path to resolution of all concerns with potential commercial aircraft availability, environmental issues, and safety. Let's take the additional time that COVID and the economy has presented and move forward towards localization of our airport and take responsibility for our future. Thanks.
Thank you, Valerie. Okay, Mona Newton, and then Tim Mooney will be up next.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing this public comment today. I want to thank the county commissioners, the staff, and all the members of the Vision Committee for holding this meeting and taking all of the considerations that are being put forward to you today. And I want to thank John Bennett because he spoke before I did, and I really want to echo the comments that he made, because I'm here today because I feel that environmental and sustainability really needs to be one of the foremost topics for conversation and consideration through this process. And it was during the many months of our discussion. You've adopted so many of our recommendations, and I greatly appreciate it. Aspen and our valley is a leader locally, nationally, and internationally, and leading on the environmental issues pertaining to the airport that we've been talking about is really ultimately important. So I'd like to just offer a few recommendations that I've offered in the past and just restate them. One is I do think, and I appreciate Michael Miracle's comments about pausing is a euphemism, and because I feel like there's so much work that we can continue to do in the meantime. And for example, we can continue to act on the short-term energy efficiency work that has been started in operations. We can actually start to pilot biofuels now, and CORE would gladly help you set up that pilot of biofuels if that's something of interest. We can explore cleaner, quieter, more fuel-efficient planes. I know that the CRJ 700 is going to be around, yes, but we don't need to support older, noisier, dirty planes. We can start looking at what's available to us now. We can also institute the carbon-based landing fees, or we can develop a voluntary carbon offset that people could take advantage of to help offset their emissions and contribute to other projects in the valley. And again, we can continue our design on a new terminal that would be net zero and be completely sustainable. We discussed in our group, but never agreed upon how to deal with regional planning of the surrounding area. the ABC, proposed affordable housing, and transit. Those are issues that are really also part of safety and the environment and should be considered as part of the future of our community. And I'm just wondering how they could get considered in this process. Again, I'm not sure what pause means because I feel that there's a lot of items that we can actually continue to move on and move forward as we get ready as we continue to move forward on redevelopment of the airport. And I use redevelopment somewhat lightly because I know that creates a whole thinking of how we're going to rework the airport, but it is really reworking it, redeveloping it, making it ready for the next 20, 30, 40 years that it needs to be around. And also it's an opportunity for us to lead not only locally, but nationally and international. So thank you so much for your time today and for everybody's comments.
Thank you, Mona. Okay, Tim Mooney. Next up on Zoom is going to be Susan Redstone.
Hello. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. And I want to thank all of my neighbors, all of my associates who have followed through with this process, as I have. I'm not a technical expert. I'm not a bean counter. I'm not getting paid by a corporation to be at these meetings. And I'm kind of a passionate person. I lived in the same house for 50 years, 3 blocks from here. I worked for John Denver for almost a decade, so I had a boss that flew me to work in a Lear 35. So we put enough hours on that plane every year to go around the world twice a year. So I had a lot of takeoffs and landings. So the airport has been an interest of mine. Mostly, I'm interested in how the character of this whole expansion, how the character of this whole idea of growth is being delivered. And from the first words out of John Peacock's mouth at the first meeting at the Door Hosier, that this is a competition, he declared, I knew that it was important for me to be in this process. The vision process was skewed. It was the thumb on the scale all the way. And I kept asking, who's telling Peacock to do this? Is there a county commissioner, or is the FAA, or the airlines? Who's pushing on this? And it basically started with the simple premise of trying to update a master plan. And then it grew into the drama that the CJ7 is going away, and we would never have air service here again if we don't come up with a new plane. Then it grew into the drama of spending $1,500,000 on researching with one-sided, lopsided experts. And, you know, we basically knew that this was all about growth, that the only stakeholder here that wanted to see expansion of the airport was to grow their bottom line. And it's the industrial, tourism, commercial, corporate companies that are operating out of Aspen. It's not the community that needs to ramp up bigger planes. It's the commercial tourism business. So we know things change all the time. That's been said. But one of the changes is that Eagle Vale has a ADG3 airport that basically does all of the work better, if more efficiently, in a better location, and is up and operating right now. So that's the competition we need to eliminate out of Peacock's scenario. We don't need to compete with another airport. I think that the research that I tried to do with the FAA or the airlines to see if they were the ones pushing this growth idea never came to fruition because no one would answer our questions. We were told that if we don't eliminate the modifications and become an ADG3, we were going to be demoted to an ADG2. We said, who's telling you that? We asked Peacock to show us the paperwork that has dictated that. We were told that if we don't expand the airport to an ADG3, then we're going to have to pay back all the money we've already used to make these improvements. We said, show us that paperwork. Who are you talking to at the FAA? No follow through, no communication. So, judging by the character of the whole process, I was very disappointed. And I'm still persistent to try and find out why there's no airport manager in this room. How can we have a $500 million projected project here, and we don't even have it together? The county doesn't even have an airport manager. You know, I think that COVID has steered this whole process, steered our lives, steered the resort, steered the community into a new reality that we don't need bigger is better. If it doesn't work, we expand it kind of philosophy. I think basically what we need to do is realize that there was no consensus in any of the committees. There's no consensus on the Vision Committee. There's really no real directive with these recommendations, and that's because line item 12, expand the runway, is the boondoggle. It's not necessary. It's basically being professed for greed instead of need. So I can tell you, if you don't modify, if you don't pause, there's going to be a vote. Just like in '95, I think the community is poised to take this to a referendum, and we're going to vote on this. So we'll be happy to have your opinion, but I think you need to hear the community's opinion, and that'll be at the ballot box.
Thank you, Tim. Okay. Yes, we got a request for a 5-minute break. You bet. Okay, we'll pick it up in 5 minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and gather back in. We'll get rolling here.
Correct. So there's a couple attendees that we brought over to share their video, but hold on.
Okay, Commissioner, are you ready? Okay. Okay, Susan Redstone, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me, everyone?
We can.
Cool. How apropos that I should follow Tim Mooney. He, to his credit, has been an incredible spokesperson, gatherer of information, arbitrator. I deeply respect his take and his influence on this whole subject. He's lived here a long time. He cares passionately about this. I hope that the commissioners didn't feel threatened. I stand by his comments, and I'm going to keep mine incredibly short because otherwise you're just going to hear them over again. If it goes to a ballot, let's see. That's just an interesting aside, but it's something I noted as he was speaking. So I'll just add two small things that have been said over and over to the comments that we've heard earlier this evening, to keep it brief. I know it's better if this meeting is abbreviated and tight in content. There really is a new world order. The COVID situation has dawned on us a new reality that in a way has shown that this project now more than ever needs to be thought through so carefully. There really is no going back. Once the cat's out of the bag and the expansion happens and it all gets going, we really are opening ourselves in a long-term way. And I just want the commissioners to keep that foresight, that long-range helicopter, but long-range view of what this, provides and procures. And I'm not sure that that's good. I've never thought that that's good. I've listened to the directives. I didn't have the pleasure to serve on the advisory committee or, make recommendations in that way. This is the first time I've made myself audible on this topic, but Tim Mooney, I followed from the very beginning. I do think that things like the fleet issues that come to light late into the day, are these little surprise time bombs and minefields that pop up. That CRJ viability issue, makes the existing planes and, projections coupled with our existing COVID and potentially, future travel possibilities. If you just amass the present information into the realm of our future and just project it forward, we just don't know what's going to happen. And so I really do, for all sorts of different reasons, including most of the ones that Tim highlighted previously, is to please just pause, consider just pausing on this. Give yourselves a little bit more time, a little bit more timeline, wait for new things to unearth, like the CRJ and the fleet issue came to light. There might be more information that's going to come out. And I just have this non-specific, unscientific gut feeling, which, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an aviation professional. I'm simply a 15-year full-time local who experiences our environment and experiences local dissatisfaction and other enjoyments of our area. Plus, I do travel frequently for work and pleasure and use the airport. So I don't come at you with anything other than a reminder that our town infrastructure can't necessarily cope with these changes, that the COVID has readjusted our sights and our long-term projections in every new way with a new world order, and that the things like the CRJ viability just keep popping up to sort of reset our, future thinking. And I would just ask you to please pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, John McBride. And next on Zoom is going to be Madeline Osberger.
I'll be fairly brief. I want to say that, do you realize that our airport is really just a postage stamp? It's a tiny airport, 575 acres. I did a study of all the uses on it today. They use up almost all the land except 40 acres. And it's amazing. People talk about expansion and going on and on. We can't. We are what we are. And we've got to learn to live with that and make it work effectively. Incidentally, if we go to Category 3 and move the taxiway on the east side to the east, we will begin to squeeze out parking. And it will push the terminal, the new terminal, closer to the highway, which would give Elizabeth Pepke Fitz, who gave the land. I want to just address the safety issue. That was the #1 concern of the committee when we started. Everybody unanimously almost said that was the #1 concern. We really haven't done too much about safety, and it's an embarrassment, all the accidents we've had. 50 and 55 years is inexcusable. And the reason is typically pilot error, not understanding mountain flying. And I think we could make a serious effort to advise and educate people in that arena. We could put out a pamphlet for flying in the Roaring Fork Valley and educate people where Marble is and Glenwood Airport and Rifle and what have you. Get pilots who fly in here in general aviation to have advanced knowledge of more than just the airport. When you fly to the Midwest, you don't need any of that. You just go to the airport and you've got open space all around you. If we could educate GA properly so that they had a clear understanding of where the mountains are, along with an education about mountain weather and winds, we would have a much safer airport. It's ridiculous that we're considered #1 most dangerous airport in the United States. There's so many simple things we could do to make it safer. And I think that localization is an important element in that as well. So I hope I know Jonathan at the ABO would like to do that, and we could easily make a booklet send out to various fixed base operations and to make them available for pilots flying here, because after all, they're not all professionals. As you know, Nick Arnold, they're people who haven't flown much and suddenly in their mountains and they get very confused, and sadly, a lot of them are splattered around our mountains. So I think that would be a good step to improving the safety of our airport, which is #1 concern. Anyway, thank you all for your concern about the airport.
Okay, thank you, John. Let's see, we have Madeline up on Zoom. And then Michael, I'm going to butcher this, sorry about that. What is it? Solons? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Madeline, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm not going to speak, Rich. I just signed up to follow this via Zoom.
Okay, good. Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, Michael? And then next up on Zoom is going to be under Aspen Power, is what we have it titled as.
No, you did it good. Mike Solon's pretty good. And thank you, commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to try and get it in under 5 minutes, so I might go fast. I'm a full-time resident here in Aspen. I've had the honor and privilege to serve on both the Environmental Impact Study Group and the Technical Working Group under the auspices of the ASE Vision Committee. I participated with Bill and many other highly qualified experts and people on that committee. It was a lot of good work. Like Andrew, I am also a professional pilot. I've had several arrivals and departures, probably a few hundred, both in general aviation aircraft and as a line pilot for the airlines. I want to make it clear I'm not here on behalf of any corporation. I'm here for myself. I've always been participating as a private citizen in the Roaring Fork Valley. My interests lie in seeing the airport improvements move forward, first and foremost from a safety perspective, has been mentioned previously, and second from an economic, ecological, and aesthetics perspective. I don't profess to be an expert on airport design, but I trust that the design engineers have provided a design that will meet the ADG3 design standards and satisfy the safety objectives and the removal of the 95-foot wingspan limitation. As you're all aware, and it's been mentioned here before, the close proximity of the Alpha Taxiway and Runway 1533 have created the necessity of a waiver from the FAA, which we currently operate under. In my limited time, I just want to focus on 3 key points in the Aspen Vision collaborative document that's currently under review by the BOCC. First is a statement to control growth to the number of gates, and other language in the document that limits the number of gates initially to 6, but possibly up to 8. From firsthand experience, I can tell you, and if you go out there in the winter season, there are up to 9 commercial aircraft parked there overnight. And that's many nights during the peak season. So placing a restriction on the number of gates today with data that you're using, I'm not sure how you're coming up with that number, I think it could exacerbate the situation, especially when there are delays due to weather and other issues. Could have a lot of aircraft parked up there with no way to enplane. I would just urge the committee to reconsider this issue and allow the design team to collaborate with the airport working group to arrive at the appropriate number of gates without a specific limitation up front. Second, the language work with the FAA to enhance safety by increasing the separation between aircraft. In my view, I don't think that's the best path. While it might seem logical that increased separation would be safer, Aspen Airport is very unique in its traffic flow pattern, and the airport tower and the FAA have designed and tested this unique flow over the years for optimal safety and efficiency. Increasing the separation could actually have negative impacts. As you have aircraft coming into the area, that would create a situation where many aircraft could be holding. Where they generally hold is about roughly over between Basalt and Carbondale, so you could have many aircraft holding, and of course that would be negative impacts to the environment with them up there burning fuel. So I would recommend removing the words increasing the separation between aircraft, but I'd still urge the design team to work with the FAA enhancing safety without this prerequisite. And I do agree that the issue of sending notices to general aviation pilots and trying to educate them better would be beneficial. My third comment is with respect to the reservation system comments that says, pursue with the knowledge that the reservation system proved unsuccessful in past applications. I don't believe that to be the case. My personal experience with the reservation system is that it actually worked really well up until 5 years ago when they took it away. And that's when we started to experience a lot of the delays, especially with the commercial carriers. Currently, on high volume traffic days when there are numerous aircraft attempting to land at Aspen, it comes down to air traffic control handling aircraft on a first come, first served basis with no priority afforded to the commercial carriers, resulting in additional holding for aircraft. And like I said before, environmentally, that's not great when you have aircraft stacked up in a holding pattern each 1,000 feet. I would recommend speaking with our design consultants as to the pros and cons of a slot reservation system before finalizing this particular document, or simply amend the language to state that the design team will explore the pros and cons of a slot reservation system. I was going to make some comments about the CRJ 700, but Bill covered that really well. I'll just say, you don't see 707s. They're even taking the 747s out of service, and most recently, the Airbus 380. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk, and I hope you guys will move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, next on Zoom is Mike Kaplan. And then Howie Mallory will be up next on the podium.
Thank you. Hello, I just want to say, well done. You're doing an amazing job on a a difficult, complex, and obviously emotionally charged topic. As I said in my last comments, there was a ton of work and energy and thought put into the Common Ground recommendation. And urge you not to tinker with it too much, but I think you guys really improved on it while honoring the values and sharpening the language. And maybe most importantly, I think strengthen the commitment to the values that I think we all embrace and share. However, it's not perfect. There are a couple of things that make me a little uncomfortable with some of your revisions. And I think they're maybe generated from this growth question, right? I mean, I applaud the language where you recognize that growth isn't managed at the airport. It's managed holistically and collectively through a broad array of conversations that you guys are having and are going to ramp up, I think. And that's going to be critical and really important for us to address this busyness question. But as some have stated, there's this claim that we entered this process with a growth bias. And I would take the opposite view. I think it was biased toward limiting growth from the beginning. I think there's been an inherent sort of rounding down on the growth spectrum interpretation. We all went through this dot exercise and placed our dots somewhere sort of around the middle in the controlled growth area. And as it got interpreted, I think most people thought, actually, if you look at it numerically, the number should have been 1.2%. But it got interpreted as 0.8%, a significant reduction, a real stretch to manage growth at that 0.8%. But, I get it, right? I think, again, we've got this issue. We want to make sure we're protecting what's special about this place. But you combine that with the Common Ground recommendation to go from, well, as Michael said, 9 gates. I thought it was 8 gates. Now, or at least pre-COVID, the recommendation to 7 was, very concerning to me. And now to see this brought down to 6, I think goes too far. And I think it threatens to put us in a position where we are indeed trying to control growth through constraining the infrastructure, and it ends up becoming non-functional. And we've seen this over the years in this community. The entrance to Aspen is probably the most obvious example of that. And I think we want to avoid repeating those mistakes. And I think it's important just to remember that saying no to one thing or dialing down one dial and not addressing the other leads to a yes to something else. And often that's an unintended consequence. Regarding the pause, I would just say this whole process has been a pause. And I would also add that COVID has been a pause. And it's been a good experiment. And what we've seen happen, to me, is likely our future if we don't keep moving forward. GA traffic is up, commercial carrier down, vehicle traffic up, busyness factor not affected, arguably up. So I think we just need to keep that in mind as you deliberate. Finally, I think I would just say, to be clear, I personally, Aspen Skiing Company, the people we work with, people in this tourist business here and committed to the resort economy, don't want to see unfettered growth. The conspiracy accusations are unfounded and unfair and not supported by our behavior and our actions. And I think you know that. But I just want to state that I participate in this process as a community member, somebody who wants this community to stay special, and honestly, an ardent environmentalist. And we have got to make these improvements to reduce our carbon emissions as a community. So I applaud you for moving forward. I applaud you, by the way, for complementing the Aspen Area Community Plan, which really lays this out, and that we got to balance all these values in this community. I think you're doing a good job of doing that. And I thank you again for your time and energy.
Good, thank you, Mike. Okay, Howie. And then next on Zoom is going to be Evan Marks.
I'm Howie Mallory, and thanks to the commissioners for continuing this process of ongoing input into something as important as the next phase of the Aspen Airport. I was a technical working group member along with Michael, but I'm speaking tonight in support of the proposed hit the pause button that's been presented to the public. A pause button with respect to the airside operations. How long? Not sure, but probably we should anticipate a couple of years. For this time, we'll provide an opportunity to do much more needed and deeper research into other airside operations at other airports, other operational models, as well as learn eventually about other potential compliant aircraft. Meanwhile, the terminal itself, the ground side, should proceed ahead with identified rebuild, new build, modification requirements to better accommodate the commercial traffic that will eventually return here. Areas such as greening ground operations should start right away. That's pretty straightforward. Also, better interface with the City of Aspen should start to occur to address the current passenger delivery challenges of traffic limitations and a poor customer experience. It's clear that the pandemic has devastated airlines. Their volumes are way down. They're bleeding cash, and they're trying to cut expenses aggressively, and they'll keep deferring new aircraft purchases until they can turn the corner on that. It's anybody's guess how many years out that will be. The pre-pandemic forecast was that the CRJ 700 or the CRJ family would be decommissioned in 5 to 10 years. But that's not going to be the case, I don't believe. Airline operators are creative. They will make modifications to their reliable aircraft to continue to extend their operating life and avoid capital expenditures probably for the next 15, 20 years, probably out to 2030. So the CRJ, we should expect to be the workhorse aircraft for this airport going ahead. We should count on that to be our main delivery system. Several times at the technical working group meetings, we brought up the competitive environment of landing slots fighting between commercial and general aviation because of lengthy commercial flight delays due to GA overcrowding of the skies. The counties tried a reservation system, but with limited success, according to John Kenney. The FAA's non-discrimination guidelines were mentioned as an operational requirement so that the landing slot reservation program has largely been inactive. And it was also our understanding at the working group that the county has little or no say or leverage with the FAA
Howie,
on this
can you
matter.
hold up a sec? Howie, can you hold up a sec? Kelly said that they lost us. Can you hear us, Kelly, at all? Okay, hang on just a second. Sorry, Howie.
Should I proceed?
This is like a soccer game. You get a penalty.
Do I get an extra minute here, 45 seconds? You're pausing me, good.
I did.
You're going to cut me off anyhow? Well, I don't mind that. So, okay.
Checking it back here. Give us 1 minute.
If you'll give me 1 minute.
You got 137.
Well, that's pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic. Okay. to start him? Do you want to start Howie over? They said they didn't hear some of his stuff. I think we should. Or how do you want to do that?
Well, I think if the sound is working so they can hear Howie, he should get to start over if he wishes to. I think that would be good. We don't know when.
I get 5.
We got their video back. We don't have their audio.
Do I have to say the same?
Can you hear us now?
before?
Kelly, can you hear us now? Says the streaming in the room is still on mute.
Streaming in the room is still on mute.
Can you hear now? Okay. All right. We're going to start Howie over to give him the 5. Okay.
Okay.
That's fair.
Well, do I have to, what if they're different?
Just start him where he left off after the CRJ, good for another 15 years. We don't need to hear Howie all over again. No offense, Howie.
Okay, where was I on that? Hang on, don't hit that button yet, Rich.
Who let you back in the country, by the way?
Okay, all right.
You were
okay.
in France,
All
is
right.
where you were. What happened?
So the CRJ will be a workhorse plane for the future, probably going out to 2030. I talked about the failure of our reservation system, landing reservation system concept that had been tried by John Kenny, due largely because of the non-discrimination clause code requirements from the FAA, making it really an unenforceable operational guideline. When asked about it, our consultants didn't really offer a solution to it. They were silent on it. Fortunately, we've had 3 local citizens, Amory, Lovings, Tom Keogh, and Dick Arnold, who've dug deeper into this issue and really come up with some options that the commissioners, I hope, would take a look at during this pause period. What they found is the concept of a locally owned and managed airport, called in industry private airport, but really it's not private in the sense that we use it. I would think we call them more locally owned airports. It's a business model and operational model that's been established by 19 airports or more around the country, and it gives the local community the ability to set standards and guidelines in 3 areas that are critical to what the community's established as important values: density or flight activity between commercial and general aviation, noise and pollution levels and standards that cannot be exceeded, and if they are, the violators are then fined. So in conclusion, what does this all mean for the commissioners? You've got a big job ahead of you to absorb all of this information, and I've got 3 seconds left. I suggest that the BOCC use this pause period to create a specific purpose task force, citizen-based, perhaps with a commissioner as an ad hoc or ex officio member, to go visit some of these currently operating airports and see what it's like, see how these airports function. The John Wayne Airport in Orange County in California is mentioned as a successful example of a publicly owned and operating local airport. It has a 5-member airport commission board appointed by the county commissioners. Well, I didn't get my full 5 minutes. Okay, give me 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds. Using this pause time, the task force should go visit and meet with the airport staff, the airport board, get the nitty-gritty on management issues and the history of what it takes these local airports to run efficiently and successfully. John Wayne's been in business for 50 years. You've got the time. If you don't take this opportunity to go visit comparably existing airport operations now, it's a missed opportunity, and frankly, I think it would be irresponsible not to convene this task force to go gather the information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Howie. Evan Marks is up, and then Andrew Scott will be next to the podium.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. for a while, I thought I was batting cleanup. I'm a member of the Financial Advisory Board for the county. That's how you know me. My credentials are somewhere in the public record. What you probably don't know is that had I not been recruited by a couple of name brand billionaires to run their family offices before I came here to Aspen, I was going to go to Wall Street to become an aviation and aerospace industry analyst. And it's really from that passion of mine, which has been a lifelong passion, that I sort of address some of these issues. But my bottom line is this: I don't really see a path forward for you guys other than to endorse goal number 12, which is going full ADG3. I say that for a couple of reasons, most of which have already been expressed. But in so doing, I'd like to reiterate, at least by reference, the previous remarks by John Bennett, Andrew Doremus on safety. The separation is very, very important. And even Barry Vaughn. His comments were harsh, but I think they were directionally correct. Before I get into a couple of my points here, I'd like to tell you that from my perspective, I push back on any reference that this process has been gaslit by consultants or staff. In my view, and I've attended, Andrew and a lot of the other people, that's on this Zoom will tell you I've attended virtually every meeting because this is a passion of mine. And my view is that the consultants and the staff have pursued this project with judiciousness, patience, and with the utmost of integrity. And that goes for the consultants as well. And you as commissioners should be proud of the staff. They've done an amazing job with a lot of complications, with a lot of vitriol, and they've kept it on track despite the COVID pause. But this is not a good time to pause. What you may not realize is that the localization, privatization alternative, it's a chimera. It is not a panacea. You will not be able to achieve the anti-discrimination goals that you desire to set by going down this route. Moreover, if you did go down this route, you would need the airlines to agree to such anti-discrimination. You would also have to pay back all of your FAA grants, which when I checked with Connie a couple of days ago, it was like $75 million back to 1994. That's a hell of a lump sum to finance on top of all the other airline improvements. In addition, if any of the real estate at the airport was financed by the FAA, the real estate will carry with it forever the restrictive covenant that you cannot discriminate. So this don't be distracted by the localization alternative, the privatization alternative. It's just not going to be feasible. I consulted one of the leading litigators for the aviation industry on this opinion. She's very much involved in a lot of the John Wayne issues. Moreover, her area of specialty is basically representing airport sponsors in suing the FAA over issues like this. She's pretty categorical about this. You're not going to be successful, and you're going to waste your time, and you're going to piss off the FAA. That doesn't need to happen. I'm going to end by just telling you how you're in a box with respect to the improvements of the terminal. Everybody believes that this is a universally shared goal. The terminal is obsolete, needs to be replaced. Putting money in it again is wasteful. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. The problem that you have with the terminal is a catch-22. In order to move forward with a new terminal, you're going to have to go through a new ALP. You guys know what that is, an airport layout plan that will be approved by the FAA. That involves the runway, the taxiway, the grade changes. They're not going to approve that unless you basically give them an additional covenant, a commitment, in some way, shape, or form that you're going to go through with the ADG3 improvements.
Okay, Evan, your times.
It just won't happen. Anyway, thank you. I don't envy you. I know this is a situation that's got a lot of heat under it. You guys have done a great job, but I think you have to go forward. You know, it doesn't pay to pause. This is gonna be an ADG3 airport anyway.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Okay, Andrew Scott. And then we don't have any others registered as far as Zoom goes, but Andrew may have some phone numbers, so he'll step up and we'll see if we've got some others that are on Zoom that need to speak. Okay, so Andrew?
All right. Well, that was a forceful argument. Forgive me for being a little nostalgic or sentimental. My first or second job was airport service agent at the Aspen Airport back in 1998. And oddly enough, I was just talking to a gentleman out here. I mentioned I was at this meeting. He said, oh, my very first visit to Aspen was right after, I think it was 2000, when the private plane whacked shale bluffs and our first responders were cleaning up bodies on Highway 82. So safety really is at issue when we're talking about doing anything to our airport, including runway or terminal. Shale Bluffs is not going anywhere. That's a reality. I feel like we just heard a very forceful kind of pressuring argument after y'all have been listening and working on this for a long time that we have to go to ADG3. Again, I agree that we shouldn't be competing with Eagle Vale, nor do we really want to, because I'm curious about what our brand is. I haven't heard one peep about the Canary Initiative. I'm not sure the Canary is still alive in our valley because it's real easy to get locked up in certain, well, corporate consulting firms will keep you very, very busy. And it seems there are interests currently that desire a certain outcome. Certain interests probably want, you know, G650s to be able to fly from Monaco right into Aspen so that if you buy the $10,000 special pass, you can also fly in on, you know, your nice plane. And that's understandable for a certain market. I'm just not sure that it's the local market. I'm not sure that we're going to benefit in any way as far as our traffic problems over the next 5 to 10 years when we'd be doing all this construction. We really have a problem with our entrance to Aspen issue. We really have a problem with congestion. We really have a problem with affordable housing. So when we're devoting multiple millions of dollars to consulting firms to potentially try to fix something that's not broken. Because when I was a little kid, I loved our airport. When I worked at our airport, I loved our airport. I still love our airport. I have not had one problem, and I fly a lot. I'm in and out of DC and New York for work. And I really don't remember a problem. If we're talking about creating a whole new terminal, which will take us from 8 terminals to 7 terminals, why don't we just go from 8 to 7 terminals now, which might reduce congestion in our airport. And I'm just, I think I'm almost done with almost 2 minutes to share. Basically, Aspen is a small town. We're not a city. We have a brand that claims to want to protect the environment. We are never going to build a new runway or a new terminal with 0 carbon emissions. That is not reasonable, nor rational, nor realistic. So I just think we should acknowledge the fact that we have real pressing issues we all need to deal with as a valley, and potentially hitting the pause button, especially considering travel restrictions and all the other points that were made by other parties about the airline industry's troubles currently. I think they all give us reason to pause and yeah, consider safety and logic and reason. And our priorities. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, we've got 6 more that are in the room, I believe. And so, Andrew, have you got Zoom numbers that you need to call up?
Sure. So I'll just jump in and give folks on the phone an opportunity to raise your hand. So if you're on a telephone, *9 will raise or lower your hand. And if you're on the Zoom meeting and you wiggle your mouse at the bottom, there should be a menu for you to raise your hand. If you'll go ahead and raise your hand, we'll put you in the queue and call on you one by one from there. So, Rich, if you want to call somebody else up for in person, I can see who raises their hands.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, Karen Bromka? No Karen? Okay, Phil Holstein? Oh, he left. Okay, Jackie Francis?
So I actually wasn't planning on speaking tonight because, you know, you guys, thank you for putting me on this committee. And my name's Jackie Francis. My name's Jackie Francis, and I was put on the committee by the BOCC. Thank you, guys. Saying that sarcastically. No, it was great. It was a great experience, and I was the navigator. And I wasn't going to speak tonight because I feel like I've pretty much said everything I need to say, and a lot of these recommendations came from a lot of the meetings that I attended, and there's been a lot of homework done on this process. So I started getting involved with these airport meetings about 20 years ago when I became a North 40 resident, and I am a scientist. I'm a climate scientist. So I've been really involved and put a lot of heart and soul into this, and I just want to know that I want y'all to know that we have done our homework. We have done our homework again and again and again, and I really appreciate, you know, all of my neighbors and my friends and the people who have said, you know, do you think these recommendations are good? Because I say yes, I think they are really good. And I want to say something really quickly, just to add on the conversation about privatization, the local control versus the private control. So according to our research and our conversations with the DC lawyers, some speakers tonight are just simply incorrect. And maybe you, the BOCC, need to clarify some of the statements that we've heard tonight and some of the comments. But we really feel like we did go down this road, and I thought it was a really good road to try and learn as much about as we could. The federal airport privatization program is mostly aimed at granting local control on issues of airport finance and revenue sharing. According to the DC aviation legal expert we met with, privatization has no effect on airports' requirements to comply with the Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990, which is about noise regulation, the Clean Air Act, which is about aircraft emissions, Airline Deregulation Act of 1978, local airports cannot control routes and services, Rates and Charges Act, what airports can charge aircraft operators. So these federal laws control virtually all the emissions and noise issues that we're discussing, and privatization would give us no extra control in these areas. We really did look at privatization, and it wouldn't accomplish that much for us. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for the work you're doing. And, you know, I just want to be kind of like done with it. And I'm sort of kidding. It would be a little hard for me to see this go to a referendum because we really have put a lot of work into it. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Did we have anybody, Andrew? Okay, Bill Greenwood? You're more than welcome to come up and speak. Okay. Okay, after Bill will be Dick Arnold.
I guess I assume there would be some design already done for the terminal, and apparently there's not, that none of that's been done. I'd like to recommend several things. One, assuming it's a two-story terminal, the second floor ought to be a really good waiting area for people. People get stuck here sometimes for 3 or 4 hours at a time. Sometimes they go back into town, sometimes they don't. But the current terminal is pretty bad in that respect, so that should be addressed. The other thing is we really need to have a cafe that's accessible to everybody. They ought to try to do that this winter. What we have now is if you're on the wrong side of the Berlin Wall, you can't get anything to eat. It seemed to be easy to make a central kitchen, central cafe, and have a counter on one side, counter on the other side, our door or whatever it needs to be, but we don't have that. We haven't had that. And last thing is parking. A lot of people don't like parking, but guests arriving are not all going to arrive in a shuttle van or something. We need parking. We need it now. We need more than there is there now. So that's mostly what I have to say. I thought I could talk about some of the other things tonight. There's a lot being said about safety. It's a long subject. Someone mentioned there are 55 accidents. As far as I know, I don't remember an airline accident at the airport. There may have been one. There certainly are a lot of accidents 15, 20 miles away. How close do you have to get before you decide that's attributable to the Aspen Airport? Andrew was talking about the runway being wider. I don't fly big jets, but I wondered if 50 feet, that's only 25 feet on each side, is going to really make any difference in safety. The jet that took off years ago, it didn't take off. It was taking off with Sally Field aboard, veered, and if I remember right, went into the fence. It was a long ways past 50 feet from the runway. It was hundreds of feet from the runway. And had it happened today, it wouldn't have hit the fence. It would have hit all the extra jets parked there because times are busy. They're just wingtip to wingtip parking. So I don't know that 50 feet more of runway would make much difference. It might, Anyway, I'm glad we're not in a hurry to spend an enormous amount of money to build a bigger runway or to move it to the side, especially with the economy and the situation it is now for airlines. And who knows when that will change. Someone also mentioned Southwest Airlines flying an Embraer in here. If we could get Southwest Airlines to come here, it'd be the greatest thing we could imagine. Thanks very much.
Good, thank you. Andrew, okay. All right, Dick Arnold, you're up.
Commissioners, thank you very much for all of the time that you've spent listening to all this. I'll be less than 5 minutes. I'm here because I was the airport manager in Aspen back in the late 80s. And I was on the Vision Committee, and I want to thank John Bennett. He's done a hell of a job with putting up with all of us and listening and keeping us straight and everything. So John, thank you. Before I was the airport manager, I had a flight school and a charter business here. I've got thousands of hours flying literally in the valley, doing touch and goes and mountain flying. And after being the airport manager, I was offered a job over in Telluride. Newly divorced, I thought, well, okay, been here for over 20 years. I moved over there and found an airport that wasn't owned by anybody in the government. It was not city or county. It was owned by an airport authority. And I've heard the word privatization and other issues on that. An airport can be owned by an authority and get federal funding. I know because I got federal funding to buy the airport in Telluride and rebuild it and do all sorts of work over there. My point today is to say that the FAA is very flexible. People would disagree with that because they like to think of the FAA as being black and white, yes or no. You come to the FAA with a logical project, especially if it's safety, they'll go, you know, I think you're right. Maybe we could change this a little bit or do that a little bit. So keep that in mind, that the FAA is flexible. It's an important issue, I think. Moving up to a Class 3 airport is being pushed pretty hard. I don't think it's going to happen. That's a major statement. I think that we could take the airport we have and make it better, no question about that. Whether it's helping the runway, strengthening it, which hasn't been mentioned, not only widening it a little bit, keeping the center line where it is. The terminal needs help. We've heard that 100 times. So, and that can be done fairly quickly. From a commissioner's point of view, I think your job is to say, yes, we need to improve the airport. You don't need to be specific whether it's 10 years or 500 million or whatever. You need to get started. And that means getting a hold of an airport engineer, manager type, who will come in and look at it, and they'll get a chance to hear all of these comments, I'm sure, to help them decide. But it's got to be somebody that can look at the airport and go, oh my God, you have this much traffic in this small little airport in this little valley? Yeah, we do, and we're going to see more. Well, then we probably should do A, B, C, and D. These people know that. They're the engineers. Put out an RFP, find one, select one, and move forward with it. The city needs to be brought into this, not from a use point of view, but from the project that they're talking about across the street. If they put in a 4 or 5 story building right across where the Mountain Rescue building is, that could be a real issue in terms of navigation and safety. I think that my background, which most of you know about, I think it was over 20 years with Mountain Rescue, over 23 airplane accidents that I was involved in, and that's close to 30 body recoveries. I've seen it, smelled it. I don't want to see it happen again. Did it happen at the Aspen Airport because of Aspen? Because of, possibly, they were coming or going. And that means that we are an issue. People want to get here. So that's all I've got now. So if I can be of any service to the county, I'd be very happy to do so. I'm back in the valley. Don't live in Telluride anymore. Thank goodness.
Thank you, Dick. Okay, and Alex Forsyth? So is there anybody in the room that hasn't spoken that would like to speak? Okay, Andrew, do we have anybody on Zoom? Okay, Commissioner, would you like to speak? It looks like I think we've covered it all, so let me bring you the mic.
So first of all, I'd like to go to the commissioners on the Zoom call. Do any of you wish to make comments right now? You don't have to. You may if you wish. George.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I really, again, I just really want to thank all the public that was out to Jerome today, that called in on Zoom. your comments are very important. This is I believe, our third public meeting on the airport. And we've got some similar comments and some different comments, some new comments. So that was it's always refreshing to hear some new ideas and new thoughts. And this certainly won't be the end of public comments as well. I think the commissioners will get together on a work session next week and have a discussion, review all the comments that we've heard and we've seen that have come in since last June or July, the last 6 months, we've been receiving comments and emails. So we've been reviewing them all. We'll try to review them and have a good discussion. And then from there, I'm sure we'll have yet another opportunity for the public to comment once again. So thank you all.
Thank you, George. Kelly?
Not much to add after George's comments. Thanks to staff and everything, this went well, minus just a little bit of technical hiccup that I'm glad we sorted out quickly. And I'm really grateful to everybody who took the time, both to send us written comments and to appear here and hang with us today. I'm sorry I'm not in the room with you. I had hoped to be there, but I just couldn't. And, waiting for COVID results for my kid. So I'm at home as my whole family. And I know it's a tough time for everybody. And I just value the quality of input that everyone has taken, the time and just thoughtfulness to provide to us. It is not too late. Again, the link that you all had access to is still there to submit written comments to us. We'll continue to read those. Those of you who sent them as of this morning should see them in our packet already. So they are coming to us expeditiously. And even as we continue this conversation, I think on a methodical basis, we're continuing to read that and review it as it comes in. And again, we will have a first and second reading on this eventually, and you're welcome to participate at that time too, because I do still continue to really think over everything that I've heard. So just want to send my best thoughts to all of you for your safety and health, and take care of each other. And thank you again, and have a great evening.
Greg, any comments?
Only to thank everybody again who's been on this. This is, I know, such a long, tedious process, but I can assure you that all the commissioners really have been delving into this. We've been reviewing it. I've read several of the documents several times, and there's always something new that comes out. I've taken copious notes tonight, as many of the other commissioners have. I did want to say that if you do want to correspond with us, correspond with all of us. It just makes it easier. If you'll send a note or a letter in, send it to bocc@pitkinneycounty.com. Then we all get it at the same time. It's great that we're all on a level playing field regarding the information that comes in. That's very helpful. And the only other thing that comes to mind is the very first thing I said upon being elected was that I really appreciate brevity. So thank you all. And so anyway, of course, sorry for the sad joke this late in the game. But anyway, thank you very much. We're looking forward to hearing more, and there will be more opportunities for public comment. Thank you.
So, can everybody hear me? Because I want to make some quick comments. Again, thank you to everyone. I think there's some really good points that were brought up tonight, things that I believe the board can and should act on. I've highlighted those in my copious, very clearly written notes so I can understand what I read all night long. What I wrote all night long, so I can read it tomorrow. I just really cannot extend again the thank you that this board feels for the public's involvement and interest in this. It's been huge. We might not agree on different points, but I think we've come to a level of discussing them in a very proper and acceptable manner, and we will continue to do that throughout this process. And when the board does make a final decision, it's only the beginning. I hate to tell a lot of you that, looking at Jackie. We have a long way to go once we have established a direction. And we will take every step of that direction very carefully with public involvement again to make sure we're on the right road to where we all want to be in this community as far as the airport, especially the safety and environmental issues related to the airport, and where we should start, where we should look to in the future. And again, it's going to be a long process. And I hate to tell you guys, I look forward to seeing you all again over and over again in the future, near future, and long-term future. So again, thank you for being here tonight with us.
And I'm going to speak from up here so my colleagues can see me, I think, on the Zoom thing. I want to recognize that we have our new commissioner-elect, Francie Jacober, is here in the audience today. Thank you for coming, Francie. She will be taking over George Newman's seat on the board in early January. Also thank all of you for coming tonight and also for spending months and months previously, all of you who served on all the various committees. Your input is very much appreciated. Just to let you all know, I'm almost certain that we will be recommending setting up an airport advisory board. That's one of the recommendations in the Vision Committee's report, and all the commissioners, I think, agree to that. So this will be, a new board akin to all the other advisory committees that the county has for various topics. And I'm actually kind of amazed that we haven't had an airport advisory committee before now, but you could think of it kind of as an extension of this whole process we've been going through with the ASE Vision Committee. So we will be at some point in time soliciting people to be on this committee, and we urge all of you to consider doing that. Also, we really appreciate everybody's comments tonight, no matter which side of the equation you are on in terms of to do the improvements to the airport or to do some improvements but not others, or to not do the air side thing. We are listening carefully to all of this, trying to gauge what the community wants, in what order they want things to happen, and how much, how big, or how small we want our airport to be, what precautions we want to have in place, which there's a really good list of recommendations in the Vision Committee report. So we'll wish you all a good night tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. Your written comments are welcome all the time up through when we do our final resolution. So 5 minutes, I think, worked way better than the 3 minutes that we tried before, which was too short for virtually everybody. But 5 minutes is not long enough for someone who has very, more lengthy and thoughtful comments that you want to submit. So we will read everything that anybody submits in this process. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you all at our next public meetings.